Last problem, example 5. We have a new system of equations. Here we go. And once again, we need to write as an augmented matrix, and we need to get it into reduced row echelon form. So I started off right here. I took this and wrote it as an augmented matrix there. And then I also reminded you, we always want to move from left to right, up to down. Now, there's going to be a lot of steps involved in this problem. This is definitely the most intensive problem we'll have this lesson. So, this is how you generally want to guide yourself. The first thing you want to do is focus on getting zeros on the bottom triangle half. So, this part. You want to focus on getting those zeros first. Then, you want to focus on getting zeros on the top half. So that's this part. Then once you have all the zeros in place, the last thing you want to do is focus on getting ones on the diagonal. So that's how I've broken this up here. In this first one, we're going to focus on getting zeros in the bottom half. To do that, you're going to do the exact same 3 steps that you've done since example 1. So first step, look at row 1 and row 2, eliminate the first column, replace row 2. Then look at row 1 and row 3, eliminate the first column, replace row 3. Then look at row 2 and row 3, eliminate the second column, replace row 3. Those 3 steps should always get you zeros on the bottom half, guaranteed. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have you pause the video at this point. I would like you to try these 3 steps, just these 3 steps on your own to get zeros on our bottom half, and then come back to check your work, check your augmented matrix to see how you did. Let's check your work. So, here's what I did first. I needed to eliminate the first column, so I times the top one by -2. This is what I got, 0, -3, -4, -9, and I replaced row 2 with it. Now, don't worry too much if you got like the same row, but same numbers, but times by a multiple. So maybe all of these are times by a negative. So you got +3, +4, +9. Totally fine, still the same thing. Or maybe they're all times by 2 and you got 6, 8, and 18. Totally fine. It's still the same row, we just have multiples of each other. And that's okay. You'll end up with the same answer. So then I got this for my row 1 and row 3 for this step 2. Replaced row 3 with that. And then finally got that. Replaced row 3. And you'll notice, just like we said before, that those 3 steps got our zeros on the bottom half, just as they always will. If you do those 3 steps in that order, you will always end up with zeros on the bottom half. So the next thing we want to focus on are zeros on the top half. So to do that, we're going to come over here. To get zeros on the top half, we're going to do these 3 steps. You will notice that they are very similar to the first 3 that we did. This one is row 1 and row 2. This one is row 1 and row 2. This one's row 1 and row 3. This one's row 1 and row 3. This one's row 2 and row 3. This one's row 2 and row 3. The only difference is we're flip-flopping these 2 pieces. So in this first one, we eliminated the first column and replaced R2. Here, we're eliminating the second column and replacing row 1. Flip-flop them. Here, we eliminated the first column and replaced row 3. We're going to flip-flop them, eliminate the third column, and replace row 1. The 3 and the 1 have flipped places. And in the last one, we eliminated the second column and replaced row 3. So now we're going to eliminate the third column and replace row 2. The 3 and the 2 flipped places. And those 3 steps in that order will always help you get zeros on the top, every single time. So we're going to start with this augmented matrix we ended with down here. We're working with that one. And you're going to do those 3 steps on this augmented matrix. And then you should end with zeros on the bottom and zeros on the top. So pause the video, come back when you've got those 3 steps done, and we'll check your work and see how you did. Let's check your work. So first one, I took row 1 and row 2, and I needed to eliminate the second column. So I times the top one by 3 to get the second column to eliminate, and I replaced row 1 with that answer. Then I did row 1 and row 3. I needed to eliminate the third column, so I times this by 2, so the third column would eliminate. Replaced row 1 with that answer. Check. And now I needed to eliminate do row 2 and row 3, eliminate the third column, so I times this one by 2. So our third column would eliminate, and I replaced row 2 with that answer. And you'll notice those 3 steps gave me zeros on the top half, which is what I wanted. So this was step 1, zeros on the bottom half. That was step 2, zeros on the top half. Last step is to get 1s on the diagonal. So I took that matrix, I copied it down here nice and big so we could have it. And now let's see one last step we need to do to get 1s on the diagonal. Looks like we need to take row 1 and divide it by 6. Because if I divide everything in this row by 6, that's going to turn into a 1. I need to take row 2 and divide it by -3. Because if I divide everything in here by -3, that turns to a 1. And I need to take row 3 and divide it by 2. Divide everything in there by 2, that's going to turn into a 1. And then I've got my 1s on the diagonal. So let's do that. Start with row 1, divide everything in row 1 by 6. 6 divided by 6 is 1. 0 divided by 6 is 0. 0 divided by 6 is 0. 12 divided by 6 is 2. Take everything in row 2, divide it by -3. I get 0, 1, 0. And 3 divided by -3 is -1. And everything in row 3 divided by 2 gives me 0, 0, 1. And 6 divided by 2 is 3. We now have reduced row echelon form. We got the zeros on the bottom first, check. Got the zeros on the top second, check. And then we focused on getting 1s on the diagonal, which means right here is my X, Y, Z answer. And we are finished. So I can come over here. X is 2, Y is -1, Z is 3. There's our solution. And just a little reminder, that would be a consistent independent solution because it has a single solution to the system. So I know that was a lot, but that is as hard as they get. That is the toughest that they come in. And you can still always follow these 7 steps as I've outlined here, and you will always solve it in those 7 steps. Follow these exact 7 steps in this order, and you will always end up with reduced row echelon form. So that is all for lesson 6.3. We are officially done with this lesson with augmented matrices and reduced row echelon form. In the next lesson, we'll dive into matrices a little bit more.